not like you.
Oh, here we are with a special coronavirus edition of my podcast, Not Like You, except this week I am like all of you. I am with you, I am in you. Oh, no, not that. I am beside you, better. I am with you, I am beside you, I am behind you. I am other prepositions, you. For we are all locked up and locked down. For me, it doesn't make any difference. They said, don't talk to people, don't leave your house, and don't talk to anybody. Social bonanza. Social isolationism. Social distancing. I've kind of been in training for this since 1992. So we're good. This is my time. When's it going to be my time? It is now. Now is my time. It's Corona time. Yes. So this thing, Irish people have a tendency to regard everything as sure it'll be grand, you know? I don't know what it's born from, because the history of Ireland is littered, liberally sprinkled with things that were definitely not grand at the time. The biggest one, of course, being the sudden lack of potatoes in 1847. Although I can't imagine there was many people at the time saying, it'll be grand. It'll be grand. It won't be grand. It'll be terrible. And many people will die. Of the potato famine, I mean. As the song The Fields of Athenry is an Irish song. It's the unofficial Irish national anthem. I say unofficial because we have an official Irish national anthem which is full of the usual vague shite about manifest destiny of the Irish people and so on. But the real one is The Fields of Athenry, because wherever 3 or more Irish people are gathered in my name, there also shall be a song called The Fields of Athenry, which is so ingrained in the Irish consciousness that many people, including myself, are close to shocked when they learn that it was written in 1974. A lot of Irish folk songs were written about the English oppression up to 1921, but they were generally, a lot of them were written in the late 60s, early 70s, when all the when the anti-Catholic and anti-Republican violence was pretty much at its height in Northern Ireland, and the Unionists were collaborating with the English police to do as much damage to Catholics and Republicans as they could. And as a result, a lot of these folk songs came out. That happens sometimes with, happens quite a lot, with artistic expression. They write something about one thing and it turns out to be another. Like Arthur Miller, when he wrote his play about the witch trials in Salem, called, what did he call it? The Crucible. That's not about the Salem witch trials, it's about the McCarthy Tribunal, where all these actors and screenwriters and Hollywood artists of every stripe would come in and he'd say, are you or have you ever been a member of the Communist Party? And they'd say no, except for a few brave souls like Bertolt Brecht, who's like, yeah, I am, yeah. Lifelong communist for EVs. What are you going to do about it? Oh yeah, nothing. So he was hauled away. But generally people would say no, and they were put on a list anyway, a list of people to avoid hiring because they're communists. Because communists don't act as good. Communists are anti-American. That's why they put under God on the currency when it wasn't there before. It was supposed to be it happened in the 1950s. It originally wasn't there at all. You know, the spiel, they put da-da-da-da-da-da-da, one nation. But they added under God to it to try and unseat the atheists. And the atheists at the time, of course, meaning communists. Nowadays, atheist does not mean communist. Atheist just means anybody who doesn't believe in a God. But America in the 1950s, and in Ireland, I think too, in the 1950s, they would have understood atheism as a function of communism. So they were fighting communists by doubling down on the God thing. So as I said, we're all locked down in this coronavirus thing, and Irish people are only recently, probably since last night, taking it seriously, because before this they were like, it'll be grand. So they shut down. First of all, they cancelled all the St. Patrick's Day parades, right? St. Patrick's Day is not as big a deal in Ireland as in other places, because it's a celebration of Irish culture. And in Ireland, you don't really need to celebrate Irish culture. It's just all over the place all the time. But I'm sure in places like Australia or America, it means a lot more to ostensibly Irish people in those places to celebrate Irish culture than it does to me. I don't give a damn one way or the other. I am Irish culture, as are we all in this country. So yeah, they shut down the St. Patrick's Day parade, and people were like, oh, that's serious, because, I mean, we still would have the day off to take the kids down and see the tractors. That's not what happened this year. This year they cancelled it. And an entertaining wag online, and I'm gutted that I didn't think of this first, suggested that they say postpone. They mean cancel, but they say postpone. Like, I don't know how you can have St. Patrick's Day on a different day, but apparently that is the plan. And an internet wag, meaning a jokester, a man of comedy, said we should have it on the 12th of July instead, which is the day that the Orange people do their business. Orange people in Northern Ireland, the Unionists, they're called Orange because orange is their favourite colour. They have their little parades and so on, which were seen, again, in the late 60s and early 70s, were seen as a triumphalist victory march through Republican areas. And if we have our St. Patrick's Day on the 12th of July, it would be amusing for the purposes of irony, but I don't think that's going to happen, because it's fun to talk about. It might not be actually nice. It might not be kind to do that to the Unionists. But it would be so funny. Sometimes it's okay to do something just because it's funny, right? That's the troll logic. That's the heuristic logic. Sowing chaos. Oh, so many things I've said and done have been just because I thought they would be funny, and not because I thought they'd be a good idea. And I guess sometimes that's okay, because I'm still alive. I've only had a gun pointed at me once, and that's okay. So we're all locked down. Coronavirus. People, there's a lot of misconceptions, I guess. I've heard some pretty bad shit happening to Chinese people. Chinese people in Ireland, I mean, who've been living here for years, and apparently they're to blame for this latest business. No. Leave Chinese people alone. The Irish solution to pretty much any problem would be, it'll be grand, it'll be grand. It'll be grand. No, it won't. But now we're taking it seriously because our Prime Minister, our Taoiseach, is what we call the guy in charge of the country. Leo Varadkar. He that's not an Irish name, but he's in charge of the country. Leo Varadkar, he's Irish, but his name isn't. He said there's going to be thousands of the cases of this thing in Ireland. Thousands. You might as well just get ready for it now, lads. Like, don't panic. There's going to be thousands of the cases of this thing. He has more machines ordered, breathing machines, the things that you hook up to breathe. Ventilation machines, I don't know what they're called, but he's ordered more of them. He's doing the best he can. What we're trying to do is trying to flatten the curve. And this, when you describe what it means to flatten the curve, sometimes it really terrifies people, because it's a very realistic approach, and there's no dancing around the bush on it. It's the idea of flattening the curve is these measures, distancing and so on, measures are taken not so much to stop the spread of the virus, but to manage it. Because all the sensible top risk assessment health service people in all the governments are saying the same thing. This virus is going to infect a lot of people no matter what you do. There's nothing you can do about it. Like a cold. You can't stop a cold from ravaging through a town. There's really not much you can do about that, no matter what you do. Because at some point, somebody's going to have to talk to somebody about something, and that'll be a vector for transmission. Doorknobs, remote controls, whatever, everything's a vector for transmission. No matter what you do, this disease is going to affect a lot of people. So the idea is to kind of, if you just let it go, it'd hit this massive spike, and then the cases would drop off pretty quickly, because whoever was going to be infected would already have been infected, which might be the most sensible approach, like if we had unlimited resources in our health service. But we don't. We have limited resources in our health services. So what they do is they're trying to slow it down. They're trying to say, if we have 20,000 cases, it's better if we have like 1,000 cases over 20 weeks, rather than 15,000 in the middle and then a few thousand either side of it. That's what flattening the curve means. And the reason I know it's obvious to everybody, I'm sure, listening to this, but the reason I'm saying it out loud is because a lot of people don't understand. They get scared and they say, my God, this isn't, all these things we're doing, they're not actually going to stop anything from happening. And I'm like, yeah, but that's the sensible approach. That's a good idea. It's fine. Like, I mean, obviously it's going to kill people, but the point is, if this is going to happen anyway, that for the dead people, it's not going to be fine in their families. I get that. But you have to look at a big picture thing. This is, by the way, where the only countries who've got a proper handle on this and please do the research and look it up yourself, are China and Vietnam. So far, China's got such a handle on it that virus was ripping through that country, thousands a day at a clip. And I think yesterday they had something like 2 new cases in Wuhan. 2. That's spectacular, whatever they're doing there. But what China and Vietnam have in common is that they're communist. This is where communism and socialism really comes into its own. Because there's certain questions that just don't make any sense. Like, if you shut down everything, like what's happening in Ireland now is everything's more or less shut down. The pubs are shut down, the restaurants are shut down. And so those places are going to have zero income for the duration. But in communist countries, they can shut down everything and it doesn't affect anybody at all. Because there's no private property or rent or anything like that. Everything is centrally controlled and centrally planned. Which of course comes with difficulties as well. Like in China, when this thing kicked off first, this coronavirus thing, the information coming out of China was apparently, and again please look this up, incorrect. And the reason it was incorrect is because the government of China was lying about the cases, as they tend to lie about everything they regard as an internal matter. They just lie about it because they don't see why it's anybody else's business. And maybe, up to a certain point they're right. This is why this Uyghur Muslim concentration camp has been very kept down, because the Chinese government is lying about it. They're saying, oh no, it's fine, they're just in re-education camps. Oh yeah, that's fine, yeah, re-education camps, no problem there. There's, I don't know, millions of Uyghur Muslims. There's millions of Muslims in China in concentration camps right now. And no one gives a shit. Millions of them. Like millions of Muslims in concentration camps in, I don't know, I forget, Xinjiang, I think it's province in China. Nobody cares. Nobody cares, first of all, because the Chinese government is keeping a lid on it and lying about it and saying everything's fine. And secondly, I suppose, because they're Muslims and no one gives a shit about Muslims, right? They're the bad guys, right? Muslims are the bad guys. Remember that? Muslims are the bad guys. Yeah, they're the bad guys. Okay? If Muslim's doing something, he's secretly trying to take over. I've seen people saying, oh, Muslims are coming over here trying to impose their Islam and their Sharia law on Irish people and so on. I haven't seen that at all. There's Muslims. I live in a town called Clonmel in County Tipperary, which is a little ass town. It's more or less rural for the purposes of most of the world. And we have some Muslims in town here, and they keep to themselves. They're not out putting headscarves on women's heads or anything. They don't care what anybody else is doing. I mean, if they've left their countries, they might be sick of the horse shit that's going on out there as well. We don't know. So, I don't know if you can hear that. That's the house telephone going off. Somebody's going to answer it. Oh, God. Just answer the phone, will you? Good man. That's my dad. So, yeah, millions of Muslims are in concentration camps in China. Nobody cares. Because, I guess, fuck them, they're Muslims, right? We are on lockdown. We're not supposed to leave the house. No one is. No gatherings of more than 100 people or something. It's all good ideas. I like that. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to flatten the curve. Flatten the curve. And that is what we should all be doing. Because we're not going to beat this thing. We're just going to manage it. It's looking like our Prime Minister, our Taoiseach, came on last night and he said it's definitely going to last beyond the 29th of March. It might last for a few months into the summer. And if it does, then the schools are going to be closed right until the summer. All the businesses that would normally involve having a lot of people in the one place, like pubs and restaurants, they'll be closed until the summer. The government has instituted an emergency unemployment money for people who are suddenly finding themselves unemployed and they've no idea what's going to happen or what's going on, which is great, because that's what government is for. And again, this is one of those things where socialism is just better. Socialism is better at managing public stuff like this. Because I hear they're having trouble in America with all sorts of things, because the insurance companies but like, you can't worry about money at a time like this. This is something that affects everybody, regardless of how much you're making or how much you're not making. I think in America they'd have a lot of trouble getting anything past the Republicans that was seen as socialist. Maybe if they phrase something else. I've found that when I'm dealing with Americans, even the right-wing conservatives, they're actually fine with socialism as long as you describe what it is rather than using the word socialism. So if you say, well, you'd have like an amount of money available to help people who have no other means of support. And you'd be like, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Or if somebody's really sick and they have no money, that you'd have an amount of money available from taxes to prevent them from dying on the street. And they'd be like, yeah, that sounds sensible. Yeah, it does sound sensible. Yeah. Socialism. Oh, I can't even do that joke anymore. I can't do the joke where you cough and you say a word, because then people will be like, oh, he's got a cough. Yeah, you know what I've got? This is great. Shingles. I got shingles recently, probably as part of my immuno. Oh, I'm a member of it at the at-risk population, by the way, because I have a chronic condition called diabetes type 2. So I'm one of these immuno blah-de-blah people. They say, oh, this disease isn't very serious. It only affects old people and immunosuppressed people. I don't want to hear that, man. I do not want to hear that action. I do not want to hear that this isn't serious because it only affects people like you, Barry. You know, that's not something I want to hear. Thanks. Try to keep that away from me if you can. So yeah, I did not write a script for this. I'm just speaking extempore. It's an impromptu podcast. So I know I'm going to go down different directions and then completely lose where I was. And that's just part of the world we live in. And we're all going to have to live in that world together. All right? We're going to ride it out together. We'll ride the lightning. It'll be great. So yeah. My memory was always troublesome. My short-term memory especially. Like, I could go out and put the wash on and come into the kitchen and somebody'd say, did you put the wash on? And literally 20 seconds previously I did, and I'd still have to go out and check. I don't know what that is. Short-term memory loss, for whatever reason. I also know that my memory is unreliable as a source of information because I remember things that couldn't possibly have happened. I remember seeing The Incredible Hulk when I was 4 years old. I saw a man and he went big and green and he burst out of his clothes. But it was in the real world I saw this. And I know where I saw it too. I could take you to the place. I'm not going to, obviously, but I could. And that definitely didn't happen. But I remember it. Even now I remember it happened. And I can see it in my head. I can see something that I remember, something that could not possibly have happened. So now the question is, I mean, I'm lucky enough there because we know that The Incredible Hulk didn't appear to me when I was 4 years old. But what about all the memories I have of things that are possible? I have memories of things that are very possible that could also be just as fictional. How would I know? So I don't trust my memories at all. It's just all pictures and images and reconstructions. Like, I used to play a joke on people sometimes, and I'd say to explain that our memories are all reconstructed rather than recalling from the magic box. I used to say, try to imagine something you did this morning, right? So let's say you walked down your hall or walked into the kitchen. Now get a picture of that memory in your head, right? Of you walking down your own hall. And for most people, not everyone, but for most people, they will remember it as almost like a third-person perspective. They'll see themselves walking down the hall. They'll almost see the back of their own head walking down the hall, right? But that's not their memory. That can't be their memory. That's a reconstruction. That's something they've done to information they had. That's a memory that they've invented. They're thinking, well, this happened, so this must have been what it looked like. Right? That's not recalling a memory. That's inventing something based on information you have. Now, of course, some people don't do that. Some people, and I don't even know how they do this, But they say that they can actually see themselves first person perspective walking down the hall, and like, that's fine, yeah, that's grand. Like, it's not a competition. I'm just trying to explain that your memories are constructed. Or another thing is to say, you drove down your road today. Again, most people will see themselves standing on the side of the road watching the car go past them when they're asked to remember that. It's much rarer to imagine for these people to imagine themselves inside the car. For whatever reason. The point is they've reconstructed it. That's not something that you don't, that's not a memory. Like, that's, we reconstruct all our memories based on information that we have, based on what we know must have happened. So how can we trust any of it? There's an organization in America who specialize. I'm going to get dark, right? I try to keep things light and it never works. We're going to get dark now. Get ready for the darkness. Prepare yourself for the darkness. There's an organization in America who specialize in explaining to the justice system that memories are incorrect. Because what happens quite a lot is a psychologist gets hold of a child and somehow the child remembers being like sexually abused or whatever, something that could not possibly have happened. But it nevertheless kicks off a whole process in the justice system where the parents get into trouble for something they didn't do, and so on and so forth. Memories are notoriously unreliable as a source of information. Of course, there are plenty of like actual cases of that, but the fact that there's any cases at all where we know those memories were reconstructed, where a child or even a grown-up remembering what happened as a child sincerely believes that they were abused while they definitely were not. Like, the fact that that happens all the time, like as a percentage, not much, but it still happens all the time. That's worrying. It should be worrying for anybody who thinks they rely on their memories as a source of information. The only way is to verify everything externally. So yeah, we're all on lockdown here with the coronavirus, and it looks like we're going to be on lockdown for some time. We did some shopping recently, and we have enough food in here for 2 weeks, but it is a little bit final scene of The Thing, of John Carpenter's The Thing. There is a touch of that. We're all sitting around the fire saying, we're all just going to sit here all friendly like, see what's going to happen. And then it just kind of fades to black and The Thing. John Carpenter's The Thing is a wonderful movie. It's like Jaws, I guess. In Jaws, you're thinking that the movie is about this killer shark and so on, but it's not. It's about how people react under pressure. And it's the same thing with The Thing. The Thing isn't about this monster from another planet or anything. It's about how people react under pressure, just watching them get squeezed by the sheer intensity of everything that's going on around them and how different people react. And some people freak out and some people take very poor decisions. So it brings out the poor decision making in everyone, I think, a crisis. It brings out whatever the worst part of your character is, it's going to pop out in a crisis. And I think that's kind of the point of these things. I have heard a story that the reason Jaws got rejigged a bit, the script, because Steven Spielberg, the director, saw the shark prop, and he didn't like it. And he just ordered another one, and he didn't like that, and he ordered another one. No matter what they did for him, the prop team, the shark looked stupid. And even in the final movie, the shark looks a bit stupid. The actual shark shots are a bit stupid. But the actors do such a great job of acting as though it was a real problem that it almost skates over the ridiculous nature of the prop. It doesn't look like a shark at all. It just looks like a hunk of rubber. So the best shots in that movie are where the shark isn't in it. And maybe that's the secret of all horror movies. Maybe that's the secret to all horror movies. Although, that's not true of Halloween. Because as soon as Michael Myers comes on screen, that you're watching, they're glued to the bloody screen when he's on. So maybe not. Maybe that's not the rule of all horror movies. And the scenes where he's not in, you're kind of just waiting for him to show up again. I don't know. I don't know what the rule of horror movies is. I love horror movies. The simpler the better. Halloween, very simple. Crazy guy coming back, he'll kill you all. Shark at a beach. That's it. Jaws is great. My dad doesn't like it. As soon as he sees the shark, he bursts out laughing, and that tends to puncture the gravity with which you're supposed to accept that people are being ripped apart in the sea. And this old guy laughing in the corner, it kind of takes the edge off it, you know. He likes Halloween, though. He really liked Reservoir Dogs. He liked That Your Man Was... That's not a horror movie. That's a gangster movie, I suppose. What do you call gangster movies? Crime, thriller. He thought that was hilarious. He just liked the guy bleeding out. In Reservoir Dogs, there's a guy who gets shot very early on, and he spends the whole movie bleeding out, like in real time almost, and you can see the pool of blood. Every time they go back to him, there's like a little bit more blood on the floor. It is funny. It's just... Yeah, okay, that's funny, yeah. I'll give my dad that. Reservoir Dogs is also a great movie. This isn't about movies, this is about coronavirus. Movies about viruses, apparently, on the uptick, as though a Netflix available movie called Contagion is going to teach you anything at all about the coronavirus, when you should be... If you want to learn about the coronavirus, just go on the... In Ireland, go on the HSE page. In England, I guess, go on the NHS page. There's proper resources of health services. They're the people you want to look at for information. I'm not sure looking at Contagion is going to tell you anything. It'll tell you something about what people are scared of, I guess. But I don't know if it's a good idea to watch these things. It's not a good idea to watch a movie about airplane crashes while you're on an airplane. Because those movies are not written with a view to explaining the reality of airplane crashes. They're written to deal with people's fears of airplane crashes. And the scenes they shoot and the lines and everything and the dialogue and the plots, they're all just processing people's fears of airplane crashes. Otherwise it'd be a documentary, right? It's a narrative. So it's a terrible idea to watch one of those movies while you're in an airplane. And I get that. And I don't think it's a good idea to watch these movies about contagion and so on while there's a pandemic happening. Pandemic is a disease that's everywhere. An epidemic is a disease that's broken out pretty aggressively in one place. And a kleptodemic is a disease that's stolen from... No, that's a lie. But this is a pandemic, this coronavirus. A lot more people are going to get infected. They reckon in England they're going to hit the spike. However flattened they make it, there's still going to be a spike in about 2 weeks. So in Ireland, I suppose we won't be too far after that. 2.5 weeks, maybe we'll hit the spike. And then after that, we're going to see a reduction in cases. And then it'll just fall off if people get their heads out of their asses. Like, there was a report of when the pubs shut down, there was people saying, oh, we'll have parties at each other's houses because the pubs are shutting down. And I'm not... The point of shutting the pubs down isn't to prevent your access to fun. It's to flatten the curve and keep people away from each other. So meeting up in each other's houses is the opposite of what you should be doing there. Just take a few weeks and live like I do. Stay away from everybody. Don't talk to anyone. You'll be fine. You can still go out for a walk or whatever. I guess outside is one of the safest places you can be. Because, like with a common cold, they concentrate infections in wintertime. Not because it's colder, or not specifically because it's colder or wetter or whatever, but because more people are more concentrated, more indoors, more of the time. So there's more availability of vectors of transmission. That's the only reason that colds take off in wintertime. Because more people are more together. In the summertime, I suppose they're all outside and you leave all the windows open and so on and so forth. The Incas, the tribal people of Peru before the Spaniards got to them, they had a form of brain surgery where they would cut into your skull and do something with your brain and so on. And their infection rate, extrapolated from skulls, they found, was less than the infection rate they had in hospitals in Europe in the 18th century. And the reason appears to be because they did it in the outdoors, which means all these infections didn't really have a chance to spread from patient to patient. They just... because they were in the open air. And the reason they know that a lot of Incas survived the brain surgery is because when they look at the brains where they were cut, the edges of the cuts are soft rather than jagged. Because if a bone cut kills you, the bone will be jagged because you're dead there. And whatever way the bone was is how it's going to stay. But if the bone cut did not kill you, the edges of the bone will be soft because your body has a chance to grow them out, try to fix them up. That's that. Whereas in the hospitals in Europe, I suppose it must have been before the germ theory of disease, they'd put people in these buildings, and if one person had a disease, then they all had it by Tuesday. So that's why we should stay away from large groups of people during this thing. And there's Italians singing from the balconies. Good for them. There was a picture of a guy singing Nessun Dorma. And I'm not surprised, Nessun Dorma, because there's this Italian guy screaming at them in the middle of the night. Why would anyone dorma at that stage? Please shut up. I have work in the morning. I'm a paramedic. Yeah, it's at this time you start to realise exactly how much we should be valuing the lad who takes your money when you buy bread in the shop. Like, he's a frontline warrior now. Like, I'm not even blowing smoke up their ass. Like, these people are being exposed to everyone, and they're trying to do it cheerfully, and well done those people. I was in Lidl today, and there's just a line of people. We're all spaced out, but at some point I have to give her my credit card or whatever, and she has to touch it, and so on and so forth. Like, she had little plastic gloves on, but the rest of her is exposed. Like, if somebody sneezes on her, that's it. Like, there's no, you can't, that's it. Like, she has it. It takes one person to make one stupid mistake. So those people are warriors. They're at the front line, and the health services are going to be, you're going to find out what parts of society we value. Like, they're spreading the news around now saying the stock markets in Europe took a tank. They took a fall. And I'm like, give a goddamn about the stock markets, man. I want to know about how our hospitals are holding up and how our education system is holding up and the things you actually value. We're starting to realise now that there's things that matter and things that don't. And things that don't matter are things like working 9 hours a day and going to meetings. All the meetings everywhere have been cancelled, and they're doing everything from Skype. And I've never been to a meeting myself that couldn't have been replaced by a 3-line email. Meetings are completely unnecessary. And apparently a lot of going to work is unnecessary if they can just do everything from home. But things that aren't unnecessary are a food supply, access to medical services. That's all stuff we need. So we're going to find out now what's important and what isn't important. And that's good too. It's good to know. I think if the Americans want to get on this, and in 2 weeks they're going to find out, they're going to have to get a whole lot of okay with a whole lot of socialism, a whole lot of fast, or people are going to die that don't have to, because they won't manage it properly. Like, a lot of socialism is just everybody just getting together and saying, look, here's all the tax money we have. Where do we most need to spend it? And forget about, like, the private sector, because they're useless at everything. Yes, there's this weird right-wing view that the private sector is going to give you the most efficient results. Like, where the hell did that come from? A bunch of people who've never seen an industry privatized, apparently. Just think of anything in Ireland or England, anything ever that's ever been privatized, and just look at the shit circus that followed. I think, at the very least, I mean, I don't mind things like Coke and Pepsi, right? Sure, have your private enterprise there, and then market competition will sort out all that. Will improve that product over time, etc., etc. But for public services that are essential, that are part of the infrastructure of life, like water, electricity, trash collection, broadband internet access, all the stuff you need, to roads, you need to make country work, all that stuff should be kept as far away from the private sector as possible. I think all that stuff should be run by government out of taxes. And like, if you ever hear anybody say, where's the money going to come from? You can be assured that these people have no idea how government works, because there is always money. There is always money. Right? That's a right-wing view. Or where are we going to get the money from? Or the thing that the right-wing Americans say, I don't want my tax money spent on this guy's healthcare. I don't want my tax money paying for this guy's chemotherapy. Which sounds sensible until you know something at all about how the world works. Right? First of all, how does this guy think private health insurance works? Yeah, it's the same, except it costs you more for not as good a service. Secondly, it's a part of the function of government to look after its citizens. Like, this is why you don't have to take your own road with you every time you want to go to town. You just use the same road everybody else uses. We have a collective interest in that road being there. And some people are going to use it more than others. And some people don't have cars. Like, not many, but I'm sure there's one. And that guy doesn't use that road at all, but his tax money was used to pay for it. He's supposed to say, oh, I don't want my tax money used to pay for all these motorists. That's a gibberish opinion. It just doesn't make any sense at all. But a government is supposed to take care of its citizens. That's what it's for. Like, these are the same people that don't seem to mind their American government going out blowing up thousands of innocent brown people. They're fine with that. Their tax money being used to spend on bombs and things. But they don't want it spent on healing sick Americans. Like, how is that not treason? How is that not treason? Like, how could you hate poor Americans so much that you'd prefer the money that you could be using to help them spent on blowing up people in countries you can't find on a map? How does that work? As an opinion? I don't know. I was in Texas, Houston, Texas, yeehaw, once. And of course, I was staying with Southern Baptists, so of course they're all pro-life, you know. And I said, you guys are all pro-life, yeah? And they said, yeah. And I said, but I just made a bunch of assumptions which turned out to be correct. I said, but you're all in favour of the death penalty, right? And they said, oh, yeah. Like, if you kill somebody, the way to avoid the death penalty is just don't kill anyone. That's their opinion matrix on that. Even though their Jesus said, always be nice to prisoners. It's in the Bible. He didn't say it like that, but he did. He said, whatever you do to prisoners, you do to me, something like that. And they're still all pro-death penalty. There's no talking to any of them. But you can't say shit. Drives them crazy. I think it's more obscene to electrify somebody to death, but I can't say shit. Yeah, we're all locked down with this coronavirus thing, which is why I wanted to do this. Somebody once, my only fan, I don't know if fan is not the right word, the only person who actually engages with me on these things, said that my podcasts remind him of that crazy person on the bus that just talks to himself and doesn't make any sense and just bounces around the place and probably has some sort of problem. I was like, yeah, that's kind of what I'm going for. Thank you. And that's definitely what this particular one has been, because I didn't have any script. I just said, we're all locked in with the coronavirus. I might as well record something, and maybe if you get a giggle out of this, any of you get one giggle out of it, it's been totally worth it. So I'm going to go away now. We'll be here for weeks. I'll probably do another one, like in a week or two. If I don't, who cares, right? If you like this, I mean, my podcast, if you like the idea of me talking, tell all your friends about it. If you don't like it, if you find it annoying or boring or stupid, please tell everyone you know. Yeah? Okay, thanks. And I am out.
Not like